Welcome to Emotional Mojo. You've probably heard the controversy around Miley Cyrus, who's been singing a song about using cocaine. At the same time, we've got movements across the country where they're trying to legalise marijuana. If you're a parent, how do you protect your children? Aaron Huey is known as the heavy metal guru. He also runs a sober living home for teens in Colorado, and he's joining us from Colorado this morning. Good morning, Aaron.
Good morning, Patrick. How are you?
I'm great, mate, and thanks for asking. Before we talk about the sober living home for teens, I didn't get a chance to tell your story because you were once addicted, right?
I was. I still consider myself an addict. I'll be a recovered addict. I've been in recovery for 15 years. I have not used any drugs or alcohol for 15 years. I began when I was 12 years old, introduced to marijuana by a neighbor friend. And, dabbled pretty normally as a kid would dabble throughout high school and experimented. I like to use that term a lot, experimented. But in college, when I really started to become unhappy with who I was and who I was growing into and who I was becoming, my drug use got worse and worse when I moved away from college and back to Colorado and tried to start a family.
Well, you just touched on a couple of really important points. Number one, that you were introduced to drug use through marijuana. Number two, that you really got into the drug use when things were going wrong for you emotionally or when you had problems with your inside yourself. So you were able to overcome that, and now you're giving back. You have a sober living home for teens in Colorado. Tell me, what is unique about your sober living home?
Well, we are a residential treatment center. We are a therapeutic treatment center for teenagers. We deal with drugs and alcohol and self-mutilation. All those are forms of addiction that can really destroy a life very, very quickly. So we work with kids for a 4-month minimum, and it's a very, very intense process. What's unique about us is that we're not some lockdown facility. This is a place when the kids come here, they recognize that the space is very open, the attitude is very, very loving. We focus on attachment, and that means creating community and relationships and how to keep those relationships healthy so that we can always get our needs met.
But you also get tough with people too, Aaron, because you've told me the stories, right?
Well, you have to. I mean, there's a level of brutal honesty that has to take place when you're dealing with addiction. There's no more BS. You can't sugarcoat things. You can't cupcake things. You got to go right for the source. There's trauma underneath all this abuse and addiction and dependency. And you've got to get to that trauma. And to do that, you got to wade through all the crap that's in the way of dealing with the real issue. And you know what? That's what I want to say about this whole legalization. As you know, I live in Boulder, Colorado, so Colorado is one of the flag-waving, marijuana-shaped flag-waving states right now. And the biggest problem that I have with this whole situation is the fact that we've got, in Boulder, Colorado, there's 122 places to grow, cultivate, and sell marijuana, and one skate park for teenagers.
Wow.
Teenagers to go and hang out and be themselves. And so I think as adults, especially in Boulder and Denver, we're really demonstrating what our priorities are to teenagers. And it's not them, it's drugs. That's the number one problem. The number two problem is that we're still not dealing with the real problem. And the real problem isn't marijuana, it isn't alcohol, it's not cigarettes, it's addiction. And we have completely bulldozed over the real issue, which is children need emotional intelligence, they need connection to healthy communities, and that includes their families. But we've got all these movies and songs that glorify drugs and alcohol.
Aaron, can I jump in here real quick? This is Michelle. I wanted to ask you talk about glorifying drugs and alcohol. We're seeing Amanda Bynes have a breakdown. We've had Miley Cyrus singing about drugs. As parents, then, how do we protect our children? Because this media is going to be out there no matter what we do.
You know, the solutions are so very simple, except we live in a culture that doesn't empower the solutions. The solutions are family dinners. The solutions are make sure your teen has something to do between 3 o'clock and 7 o'clock and not just hanging out. Look, most families have to have either 2 jobs to make ends meet, or you've got a single parent who is busting their butt trying to make things happen. And so we've got a child between the ages of 12 and 17 who is home alone at the most important time, when that's the time after school when they need to connect, they need to release, they need to let go. Children, teenagers, they're being raised by other teenagers because parents got to work. So we're not living in a culture that's just going to say, hey, yeah, go home, be with your kids.
Aaron, you've raised some great points, and it all starts with the family. It's about having family dinners. It's about the parents getting involved. We would love to talk to you all day about it. Obviously, we're out of time, but we want to say thank you. And if you go to our site, emotionalmojo.com, you can learn a lot more about Aaron Huey and his sober living home for teens. Thanks, Aaron.
It's my pleasure.
That's some really, really great information.